Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kurtis Lindqvist from Linx, and I'm going to talk about something very tangible and physical about infrastructure. And it seems a bit odd to be talking about this in a fintech startup, conference. But if you bear with me for the coming 20 minutes, I hope I can explain a little bit why this is important and why I think you should all care about this and listen to this. So, how does the internet really work? Anyone here who thinks they have a great idea of this? One, okay. That's good. Well, we'll see. So, for most users of the internet, you have your computer in front of you, and through magic, all this information becomes available at your fingertips, right? And if you're like my father, he's 84 years old, he's got a computer, and he's really amazed that anything I write is in his computer, right? He actually thinks the entire internet sits in his computer, right? And he thinks that's quite fascinating. And I don't think he's alone. I think many people have this, conceptual understanding. But if you're doing anything with critical services like fintech or similar services, understanding how that information actually becomes available and how crucial that is could be quite important for the success of your industry and your company and your business. And I'm going to try to explain this a little bit and also explain a bit what we do and why I think this is important for enterprises and why we see more and more, especially in fintech, caring about these services. So on a very conceptual level, the internet is a web of networks, of content, networks, access providers, sort of your internet suppliers. And then we have this magic, the cloud, right, that sits there and provides some sort of application to you. And the hierarchy of this, if you start from the end users at the bottom, we have the enterprise customer of BT, we have the end users of TalkTalk or of Bhutan Telecom. And I picked this deliberately at the far end of the spectrum because whether you are British Telecom in the UK or Bhutan Telecom in the Himalayas, this all works the same and you're all following the same rules to play if you want. And you then have some sort of transport network that will take your traffic from those providers across the globe, either from the UK to the Himalayas or to the Googles and the Microsofts, and then beyond their networks into their services, so the Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure. And they're all variations of this, but this is essentially how it works, right? And these interconnects, the links between these components on the internet, that's actually the glue of the internet. That's the fundamental part that makes all this work. And how the traffic flows from the enterprise or the end users up to the services, that's what determines the performance or the experience your users have or the consumers of the services. And in many cases, and by the way, this is a highly simplified picture, so don't hold me responsible for this is exactly how the internet works. This is a conceptual picture. And this is true for all the applications. This doesn't have to be Google and Microsoft. It can be Apple, AWS, PayPal, Salesforce, whatever the content are. It can be Facebook, etc. Your cat videos get delivered the same way, right? And behind Google, you have Google Cloud, but you also have YouTube and all these services. And that's how this traffic flows, and you have these larger international carriers sitting in the middle, the telcos, who will somehow act as a long-distance transport for the internet traffic. So now that was the conceptual level. In reality, it's slightly more complicated than that, and I'll come to that. Most of this is actually handled by some sort of clearinghouse or a neutral party like us. So Linx is a non-profit mutual company. We're actually owned by all the networks that uses Linx services from around the world. We're one of the largest players in the world in this, mostly because of the location of London. Although we're not just based in London, but I'll come back to that. But more importantly, we're also a trusted community. So all the members of Linx, all the users of Linx, they're all members of this club, they're all members of this service, and they all get access to each other, they cooperate and they work with each other when there are operational issues, but also in sharing information and understanding how these traffic flows work at the moment. The traffic over Linx is also what's called settlement free. So in the case of my example here, when let's say the BT is connecting to Telco Limited in order to reach Bhutan, BT will pay them as essentially as a metered fee. BT might be a bad example, but let's assume that there's a provider. They will do this metered fee charging. While if you connect to the shared platform or a part of this community, you actually does the traffic exchange settlement free. So that means that you pay us a service fee, but you send all the traffic you need to under that service fee to reach the destinations you want. But the most important thing isn't necessarily the cost saving. Most people are interested in the direct connection and the relationship with the other networks. I'll explain that in a second. So what we're also seeing increasingly is that, and this is where this gets interesting for you guys, is that we're seeing more and more enterprises in general, and especially fintech companies. They were definitely the first ones who started joining Linx and building their own infrastructure. They join Linx, and thereby they create their own direct relationships with these networks around the world. So whether you are serving, and keep in mind that this is not to replace the BT, but this is in complement to BT service. But they are doing this to reach Bhutan directly. If you're a London-based network or a European-based network and you want to have a global reach of your services, you can reach all those telcos by joining an exchange platform like us. And this is important. And so, again, just a simplified schematic, you have this mix of connectivity options. Transit is what you buy from a telco, but then you have a direct relationship with other networks, A, B, and C, where you can have full control and full understanding of that traffic flow. I'm going to open up for questions afterwards, by the way, so if anything, this seems very abstract. Hopefully I can explain it a second time. No. So why is this important? So if you're the poor end user sitting there at the bottom trying to access any of these services, you've all seen outages, you've seen delays or latency. And all of these experiences, negative experiences, influence end users' perception of how good your service is and how willing they are to pay for it, right? And whether this is the performance, so in terms of latency, so the round-trip delay, how long I had to wait for a page to load, how reliable the service is, or how resilient. So if I only buy my access from a single provider and that provider has an outage, then my service is done as well, right? But more important is also, I might have secondary dependencies. From my enterprise network or my solution, I might use cloud compute, cloud storage, etc. And I want to understand how these components actually all fit together. The important part here is that if there is an outage, how do you communicate that to your customers? And how do you even know that there is an outage? If you don't have this relationship, if you don't have this insight into the flows of traffic and how these components fit together, you basically have not much to tell your customers except that there is an outage. So what we are seeing increasingly is that a lot of the enterprises who do this, they come to Linx because they no longer want to just trust the third party. They also want to have some control over the traffic flows and how their end users actually access their network or their services. And they want to make sure they have increased resilience. We're seeing this quite a lot. This is becoming very popular. Even if you have storage in the cloud or your application sits in the cloud, you yourself must have an ability to engage in the solution and plan how that cloud compute actually reaches the rest of the world. And one other part of this, and as I said, the performance is that you have to have a full understanding of what is it that affects the performance that your end users experience. Whether this is automatic, so it's machine to machine, or whether this is human to machine, you still need to have that understanding and the end-to-end overview of how that solution performs and what actually affects that performance. And as I said, cost is also an element you might want to consider are the cheaper ways to have a global reach than what I do today. Paying this just to the cloud in blind is one way, but then you fail all the other solutions. And the last one, which is quite interesting, is increasingly we're seeing denial of service attacks is pretty much commonplace today, or ransom attacks. And how do you deal with this? I mean, that's one part. The other part of this is, what if your solution becomes successful overnight? I mean, I know of a very large enterprise that launched a new website. It's a very multinational British company that launched a new website, and what they hadn't thought about was that to load the front page was currently took twice as much bandwidth as the old website. And they also did a very heavy marketing campaign And in doing so, when the website launched, they had all their end users, which is millions, went to this website, and none of them could actually get to the homepage because they had never thought about the consequences of building this new website, right? And in that case, how do you add capacity quickly, right? You know, how do you scale that up? That's something that, again, if you have a direct relationship with all these providers, that's less of an issue that people come to. So if you join a platform like Linx, or us, preferably, you will have direct access to all the consumers and the enterprises, which is a great benefit, as I said, when it comes to having control over the end user flows. You will also get access to, we often talk about cloud services, but as importantly, all the payment clearinghouses, the PayPals, the Apples, etc., are also present at these platforms for exchange of traffic, which is as important. And you'll have this direct relationship with providers from all around the world. So we believe that the services we offer, the peering services, is a very simple thing that will help you and similar companies to actually achieve success, especially when it comes to the customer interaction part of this. And I think it's very important for you to think about these aspects of this. Just to give you an idea of this, so we're a very old company, founded in 1994 by the first 5 internet providers in the UK. We handle 4.3 terabit of traffic at any second, and there's 890 networks from 80 countries, and it tells you a little bit about how global the reach is from Linx and from the access of Linx. We have quite a global presence. These are all independent sites, so we operate in 16 data centers in London alone, which is the largest exchange we have, but we also operate exchanges throughout the UK, in the US, and we just recently launched in the Middle East as well. So that was a very short overview of infrastructure, why I think this is important for you. And with that, if anyone have any questions, I'll happily take them. Oh, there should be questions. Oh, there we go.
No? No Slido questions?
No.
A hand up the back there. Can we have a mic up there? There's just a mic coming up the back. We can take 2 questions.
It's a very analog way of asking questions.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you. So picking up on your point about if you're setting up a new company, you might need this high connectivity, private net within a country. It all makes sense, and I was chatting to one of your guys earlier. Good stuff. So, obviously, if you're a fintech, passing lots of data around, what you say is obvious, that if you grow quickly, you're going to need something like you. How worried should you be if you're a blockchain company creating a new, maybe a fintech offering, but without too much data because you're operating on the blockchain, but you're getting new customers. So you might suddenly scale to 2-3 million customers if you're lucky. Should you be worried about this for that sort of scale of a website? Or is that manageable as your business grows? You just pay Joe Bloggs to do it for you?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think the honest answer depends on the transaction value of your company, right? If there's 2 million customers, normally there's not an even distribution, right? You have a concentration of customers to generate most of the margin. You want to make sure that those customers always have a reliable access to your service, right? If you don't have that, then you're very vulnerable. And so if there's a high frequency transactions with high value, you want to protect that transaction stream. And something like Linx can help you do that, right?
Great, that's useful in itself. Thank you.
Anyone else? It's all too technical, too scary. Too early in the day.
Who understands it all now?
Anyone?
They don't understand it, but they're too afraid to ask you a question.
I'll come ask me afterwards, or see our stand outside. We can talk more.
Yeah, right. Linx has got a stand outside, so please, if you're too embarrassed to ask your questions now, then please go out and talk to them outside. So thank you so much.
Thank you.